John, you have 3 minutes to tell us a little about yourself. We'll start with you.
All right, John Damel, Jen Casper, right?
I did say John Dable.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank the chamber and Bob for moderating this with these forums that gives people a chance to really learn about their candidates. So I'd like to thank everybody who's listening as well. I'd like to thank my family, my wife and kids, and all the supporters that have gotten me this far. I am a lifelong resident of Winnebago County. And matter of fact, I'm eighth generation to walk this land. I've always had a job since I was old enough to carry a paper and deliver it to doors. I graduated Oshkosh North High School and went to UW Fox Valley, where I took classes in business, communication, anthropology, and philosophy. After one semester of financial aid, I realized that wasn't for me, so I decided to work my way through college. I got a job to supervise a kitchen. Still found time to be the programs director for the television, the radio station. I was sat on student government and was on the student fund committee. Worked my way through college and decided to finally take a degree in the one that paid for them all and open up a restaurant when I was 25. 17 years later, I'm still here. I've won many awards, 4 and a 40 through the Oshkosh Northwestern People of the Year Award in 2019. I'm sitting on the Oshkosh North High School Hall of Fame, and I'm very honored for that. Didn't see that one coming. I was the chamber of the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce in a year where we had to keep Oshkosh Corporation right here in Winnebago County. But I also championed businesses both large and small, and I pushed for a tiered membership dues so that small businesses could have an easier time being part of the chamber. But I also championed the people through Heroes of Oshkosh or the Oshkosh Kids Foundation or the Day by Day Warming Shelter and many other organizations that I've always been involved with. I've always been out there working for the people. And last year, we saw a lot of crisis. And I worked alongside so many great citizen leaders that led the way. Every time we had an event for people in need, our lines were long. Meanwhile, we ran quite a surplus in the government, and it kind of felt like we didn't have that partner along with us. So I'm running to kind of bring that change to you. And I do know how to run a business, but I would like to say that government is not a business. Government is a service and should be ran that way. And when your county government is running a higher profit margin than you are, it's time for a change. So that's why I'm running for your Winnebago County executive, and I hope to earn your vote on April 6th.
Thank you, John. We'll move on to the incumbent, Mark Harris, County Executive, has 3 minutes to tell us a little about himself.
Sure. My wife, Susan, and I have raised 3 sons here through, primary, middle, and high school, and they're grown and moved away now. I went to the University of Michigan and received a Bachelor of Business Administration with an emphasis in accounting. In fact, held a CPA certificate in Michigan and Indiana. I also attended the University of Michigan's law school, and I have a law degree, and I practiced law prior to moving to Wisconsin some 25 years ago. I was a foster parent for 2 years. I've served 3 years on the Oshkosh City Council and 1 term on the county board prior to running for the county executive position. And I've held that position since 2005. The county does have large reserves, but understand where that money goes. We've got a large principal payment due on a bond issue of $8 million. The board has already unanimously agreed to apply surpluses from this year to pay for the highway projects. And it's managing that outstanding debt, which we'll talk about later, that's allowed me to hold the county taxes on residents roughly flat, despite a significant shift of the tax burden between other classes of property holders and residential homeowners.
Thank you, Mark Harris. Now, the questions come to us from the membership of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. We solicited these questions, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and we'll go to the challenger first. We'll have an alternating pattern here. It'll be quite easy to understand once we get done with it, but we will go back and forth. We'll start here with the challenger. The first question this morning goes to John Damel. Outline your agenda for change. Include your top 3 priorities for the future of Winnebago County. What will your role be in making this happen?
Well, I'd say my top three would be communication, collaboration, and growth. Communication definitely has to improve within the county. We need to understand it goes both ways. We have to be available for the citizens, and we have to be there and respond to our citizens. Our Department of Health and Human Services let $6 million go unspent, and it's not because of the lack of willingness to help people. It's just the lack of connectivity of people to get to it. So I definitely want to install or restore a communication for people. Collaboration has to happen. That needs to be between public and private entities. We have to make sure that our departments are working together, that we are a decent partner in government. And growth, 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 growth. We need housing, and we need housing bad in this county, whether it's affordable housing or workforce housing. Without housing, we can't. People can't have nowhere to go. We can't bring people to the county, and we desperately need that workforce. Without the workforce, our businesses can't thrive. Without the workforce, we can't attract industry. And the growth will actually help increase the tax base without increasing your tax bill. It doesn't mean that the county needs to be a leader in economic development, but we definitely have to be a strong partner. And those are some of the things that I would be bringing.
All right, we'll pose a question to Mark Harris as far as your agenda for change. Include your top three priorities for the future of Winnebago County. What your role will be in making these things happen.
Well, I certainly want to continue to control taxes and debt in the county. I think that's very important for both economic development and for the well-being of the community. I'd also like to see a major expansion of broadband and high-speed internet into rural areas of the county. We've seen where that can really be a limiting factor. For instance, when some classes were being taught online, many families didn't have enough access to the internet to fully appreciate those. There's some unfinished work that I'd like to see completed, including the development of some higher paid jobs in the aviation business park. And I'd also like to see a concert series, maybe 4 concerts a year on the Life Fest stage.
All right, Mark, this question will go to you as we alternate back and forth. But this again from our membership, what is your position on term limits for the position of county executive?
Well, I've always thought that the public has the ability to limit the term of somebody. But if they feel someone's doing a good job and they trust them, then there's no reason why the public can't reelect them and have them continue. But it does require some attention on the part of the public to make sure that someone they elected long ago is still doing a good job. I think I am.
John, I'll pose a question to you now. What is your position on term limits for the position of county executive?
I've always been a term limit guy, but Mark's right. The people have the ability to set their own term limits. Personally, this is not a job that I want to do forever. This is something that I want to come in, affect change, maybe 1, maybe 2 terms, and then we'll see where it is for where it goes from there. But I think the government can really get stale. And sometimes when you've been in that position for a long time, your eyes are no longer fresh, and you fail to see some things that are obviously in front of you. So I don't think that government should ever be comfortable. I think every election should have a primary and a challenge, that we have to make sure that we have good options there. And that all depends on citizen involvement. We need people to run for positions. We need people to get involved. And if we have enough people to get involved, we can absolutely talk about term limits. And until we increase that citizen involvement, we're going to be stuck with whatever we run with. So if people want to get involved, absolutely term limits.
All right, I will pose this question again to the challenger then, John Damel. And this one, what distinguishes you from your opponent?
I would say just the collaboration aspect and the many facets of helping people through all the works that I've done. I've always been hungry. I've always understood things. I'm always a quick learner. And Mark is great with budgets, and he would be a fantastic financial advisor for anybody. And I appreciate the budget he's done. But in the year 2020, when we saw a crisis, we needed somebody who was there for outreach. And I didn't feel like that partner was there in the community. That you have to have a pulse in the community and understand where the fires are. The fires don't, in a fire station, the fires don't come to you. You have to go out to the fires and put them out. And we didn't do that. So I would say one of the big things is just that passion and drive to communicate and reach out and work on collaborations to get the job done.
All right, Mark, I'll pose a question to you. What distinguishes you from your opponent in this race?
I think it's my attention to details and my understanding of financials and contracts. And I can give a quick example. The state seized a revolving loan fund from all the counties that was funded with CDBG money. But they gave a 2-year window where the counties had an opportunity to pull the money back. And I worked with a consultant and we pulled back about $1 million of that money to do a road project that otherwise would have fallen on the taxpayers. And that was from attention to detail. Another thing would be that when the CARES Act money was out there, most of the counties were saying, we can't figure out how we can use this money. There's restrictions on it that make it unavailable from just about anything besides hand sanitizer and masks. And I was the first county executive to discover that the federal rules had changed and that where we had reassigned people's functions in law enforcement, public health, or human services, that some of that money could be recovered through the CARES Act as well. And that brought in an extra $1 million to the county. I think attention to detail and understanding the financials are very important. And I think that's going to probably come back later in the debate because there's been some fundamental misunderstanding of the human service budget. The money the county puts in is a tax levy. There's other funds and money that come in from the state and federal sources, but the county's putting in more than $1 million more in tax levy to the Human Service Department today than when I was first elected in 2005.
Again, we have the two candidates for Winnebago County Executive joining us in this candidate forum and put together by the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. John Damel, the challenger, and Mark Harris, the incumbent. We're going to move on. We talked a little about COVID-19. We've touched on it a couple of times, but this from our membership. Mark, you'll get the first crack at this one. The Public Health Department recommended to the county board to impose a countywide face mask order in the event that the governor's comparable order was repealed. Did you support this? If you are in favor of a continued mask mandate, what peer-reviewed studies can you produce to support that position? Mark, you have the first opportunity to talk about this.
Yeah, I was completely in support of that. I have a real fear that the court has heard a case. They've had all the evidence now for months. At any time, they may tell the governor that he can't renew his mask mandate. If that were to be the case, I think we need to have a mandate in place until everybody that wants to get a vaccination is able to get one. If members of the public that haven't been vaccinated are going unmasked, that pose a risk to the others that want to get vaccinated but haven't done so. So I think that's essential. The entire scientific community, the CDC, they all say that wearing masks significantly reduces the spread of COVID. I think even my opponent agrees with me that masks make sense. And there was a state, I believe it was Nebraska, where the governor passed a mask mandate and the legislature then said, okay, we're going to let each county decide if they're in or out. And that's the one example where we can compare counties without a mask mandate to ones that had a mask mandate. And there clearly was a significant difference in the amount of spread.
All right, John, I will give you the same question and an opportunity, 2 minutes again, to the challenger. The Public Health Department recommended the county board that they impose a county-wide mask mandate order in the event that the governor's comparable order was repealed. First of all, did you support this? And if you are in favor of a continued mask mandate, what peer-reviewed studies can you produce to support your position?
No, I wasn't in support of it. We did have a statewide mandate already, so I didn't understand the overlap. I know we didn't want to have a space in between that. But we have to realize that our county is very diverse and very different. And places like Larson are different from Oshkosh. I'd also like to say that Doug Guerin has unfairly, I guess, gotten a lot of heat for this. It's his job to push worst case scenario, but it's our county leadership's job to balance that out. I've never really been in favor of the mandates. I think it forces pushback and rebellion to it. But Mark is right. I do believe that there is value to the mask, but I think there's also damage with the mandate itself. So I would be against it because it all depends on which city we're looking at, and each population and each micro group has the right to decide what they're comfortable with. You know, whether it be in a kitchen or in a three apartment or three person office. Each population should be able to decide for themselves what they feel comfortable with and respect the thoughts of each other.
Another question, we'll go back to you, John, for this is along the lines of COVID-19. The county board provided the public health director the authority with the county board approval to implement general public health orders. This authorization gives this public health official tremendous power. As county executive, would you allow the public health director to recommend a general order that you did not agree with?
I mean, recommend, sure. Advisory, fine. But to pass it as a mandate, I don't think so. I think Doug's done a fairly decent job with understanding where we're at. But for me personally, I tune in to this radio station and I listen to Dr. John Newman to find out regionally how we're doing here, because that's what matters. You know, what matters to me is how we're doing here in Winnebago County, not so much New York or LA, but how we're doing here. So to base your ideas or your statistics or your facts on cities that are thousands of miles away doesn't make sense to me. So I would definitely work with my health department, and hopefully we can come to an agreement on where the middle line is and where we need to be. However, that being said, the authority I don't think was necessary. They're already, if the situation is bad enough, if you came back from Africa and had a case of Ebola, the federal government will be here and they will quarantine you rather quickly. So that authority is still there at a bigger level for a crisis situation. And I don't think that should be brought down to that much power should be given to a government at the county level.
Let me restate the question. Mark Harris, is your opportunity to give us an answer to this one. The county board provided the public health director the authority with county board approval to implement general public health orders. This authorization gives this public health official tremendous power. As county executive, would you allow the public health director to recommend a general order that you did not agree with?
Boy, that's a tough question, but let me rephrase the history on that, because the actual power to make orders came from the state, and it came from the state decades ago. And no state legislators have proposed any changes to that authority. What limited the authority in our county was that our county code didn't have the proper language to allow for enforcement of the orders that the state authorized the public health director to make. So in the process of considering modifying our code to allow those orders, we actually struck a compromise that brought the county board into the process so that you would have an elected body as part of that decision-making authority. Now, your original question, would if the order the health director made disagreed with my own convictions? I probably would express that to the health director, but I wouldn't ban it entirely. And I've actually already faced that at one point. I was not very sure that the county should extend the stay-at-home order. The county health director had reached an agreement with a number of neighboring counties that he thought that would be a good idea. And then ultimately that collapsed because we had no authority to enforce it. But in truth, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and the Republican legislators had all asked for a small extension. And I think had they had that, they probably would have worked out some reasonable rules to impose. Because as you'll remember, when that was lifted, it was just a free-for-all.
We're going to move on from COVID-19 for a moment here. We're going to move on to taxes and fiscal questions. And we'll go back to Mark Harris, the incumbent here. He has the first opportunity to talk about, the budget. And the governor's proposed 2021-2023 budget would repeal Act 10, the signature initiative of former Governor Scott Walker that has saved taxpayers more than $13 billion. Repeal of Act 10 would restore collective bargaining for public sector workers. Now, do you support the repeal of Act 10? And please tell us why you feel about the issue that way.
Well, the governor's budget was more of a political document. He was well aware that the legislature was going to reject his budget and start anew from last year's budget. But there were some things in that budget that I think were reasonable. He was going to put a 2% floor in the net new construction. I don't know that the county would need all of that, but that would be more reasonable than having it based strictly on net new construction. You know, a lumber shortage may push down that net new construction number at the very time that wage and healthcare costs are pushing up. And I've got to live within the current limits that I can only raise the levy by the amount of net new construction. But even that would raise the taxes on homeowners if I didn't reduce the county's debt and didn't reduce the amount of debt service charge that we included in the tax levy. That's how I've controlled these taxes. And by the way, on April 1st, we will be paying off an $8 million principal payment that was due, but we'll also be calling 2 old bond issues that still have about $2.8 million of outstanding balance that are at a higher rate of interest. And those savings will allow me to cut that debt service rate again to keep homeowners' taxes from rising as rapidly as would otherwise happen.
We will give the question now to John Damel, the challenger. The governor's proposed 2021-2023 budget would repeal Act 10, the signature initiative of former Governor Scott Walker that has saved taxpayers better than $13 billion. Repeal of Act 10 would restore collective bargaining for public sector workers. Do you support the repeal of Act 10? And tell us why.
Well, not necessarily. I don't support the repeal of Act 10. That being said, it's because you're making public workers leverage taxpayers for their raises. But we have to do a better job of paying our public sector people more. I think some of the levies or the restrictions that we have of giving somebody a raise based on the level of their service or their work is a little ridiculous. So we have to be able to attract the decent workers to our county. Let's say social workers right now. We need to pay our social workers a little bit more so we can track the level and the numbers that we need here in Winnebago County. Do I think Act 10 necessarily solves that issue? I'm not sure, but we definitely have to be able to not so much have them bargain for higher wages, but for us be willing as taxpayers to pay our service industry people a little better. Now, it's been hard throughout the years because their benefits have been great. They've always had great insurance. They've always had a great retirement plan. But those costs are not necessarily being covered by any cost of living anymore. It's becoming a detriment to them. And I understand that they have a little better situation than some of us, but we do have to take a deep look. And are we paying people decent for the job? Are we having the workforce that we need to do the work? So Act 10 on the way of us being able to give those incentives definitely hurts.
All right. The next question, again, this has to do with taxes and brings back COVID-19. And this is the question. It goes to you, first of all, John Damel. The recent COVID relief package earmarks $350 billion to bail out poorly managed states and local units of government. Winnebago County's allocation to this is about $33 million. Does Winnebago County need this funding? And how do you suggest it be best used by the county?
Oh boy, here comes the independent in me. This is tough. Do we need the money? Probably. But are they going to do any better with it at the federal level? Probably not. So we might as well bring that money into our county, but we have to do the right things with it. If you're getting a one-time money, it needs to be tied to one-time costs. We have to be very careful to put it into programming that's long-term, because eventually when that money's gone, we have to keep that programming up. You can't just take the programming away. And the Boys and Girls Club found this out with a meal program they did where they started providing a breakfast for kids. Well, then the funding ran out. And how do you take the breakfast away from kids? You can't. So you have to find a way to increase your revenue to cover that. So if we can use this money and invest in some of the capital projects throughout the county that we desperately need. Now, one of the things on that could be that broadband out to the county. Now, it doesn't mean we bring it all the way, but we might be able to do a couple arteries and let private sector figure out the veins. We definitely have some capital projects going on here in Oshkosh where we serve some of the most hurting populations in our county, that we should definitely be looking to investing in to serve that long term. But one-time money has to be one-time cost. Normally, I would say no, we're in a good financial position. We don't need it, but it's not like the federal government's going to do any better with it. So we might as well bring it in this county and actually serve our people with it.
And let me say this, we're just after 8:30 in the course of the forum. You're listening to News Talk Radio 1490 WOSH Oshkosh, and we will go back to the incumbent, Mark Harris, for the same question we asked moments ago to John. The recent COVID relief package earmarks $350 billion to bail out poorly managed states and local governments. Winnebago County's allocation of this is approximately $33 million. Does Winnebago County need the funding? And how do you suggest we best use it?
Well, that money is going to come to Winnebago County, about $16.5 million in just a couple months, whether we need it or not. So our obligation is to spend it as wisely as possible. Our economy is actually pretty strong here. Our unemployment just dropped down to 3.7%. And a recent Fond du Lac Reporter article indicated that Oshkosh and Neenah were among the top 30 cities in the entire US for job growth since the beginning of the pandemic till November. So we're actually in better shape than much of the country, but that money is coming to us. We have to use it wisely. I think broadband expansion makes a lot of sense. We won't get the regs that really tell us how we can use that money. But I would like to partner with some of the not-for-profits to make sure their needs are being met. I'd also like to partner with the towns, villages, and cities that maybe we can collaborate on some projects. But it is a lot of money. I think a lot of good things can be accomplished, and there's no benefit to our community to leave any of that money unspent if it can be for long-term advantage. But I would have to agree with John. We have to be very careful that that money doesn't go into recurring expenses that we won't be able to sustain after the pandemic monies are gone. But I do need to jump back to something else, reference to pay. The county's operational expenses are in fact restricted by Act 10. And it's very tricky under net new construction numbers that have been between 0.5% and 1.5% to pay any larger raises. Even the ones we've paid have exceeded the net new construction amounts only when we could find efficiencies elsewhere in the county budget to shift to payroll.
All right, I'm going to move on to another question. It seems like we've done this question every year for the last 20 plus years because it's still there. Winnebago County, this is a question for Mark Harris. Winnebago County is one of 4 counties in Wisconsin that does not impose a half-cent county-wide sales tax. Should Winnebago County join the other 68 counties around the state and impose this tax? And your feeling about the 0.5% sales tax?
Well, I've always gotten clear indications from the board that they did not want to adopt that tax. I have mixed feelings. We don't need the revenue from that tax to get by. And quite frankly, the rules on that is that it would either have to go to county tax reduction or distributed to municipalities within the county for them to do tax reduction. It wouldn't, for instance, allow us to spend more money in human services. But my feeling is that I won't propose it again. I proposed it years ago and the board indicated no, but I always have felt that when we weren't charging the tourists and the visitors sales tax, that meant that we had to be charging more property tax to people that lived here. So it is a trade-off, but I won't be proposing it. If it ever comes up, it'll have to come up from the board.
All right, John, I'm going to give you the same question. Let me pose it to the challenger, John Damo. Winnebago County is one of 4 counties here in Wisconsin that does not impose a half-cent county-wide sales tax. Should Winnebago County join the other 68 counties that currently impose the tax, and why?
No, they shouldn't. As a matter of fact, it goes to property tax. So I don't think we should be charging people that can't afford property to subsidize people that can afford property and pay property tax. I think there's some misconception on that too. People think that EAA, look at all the money we're leaving on the table. If you come in from a different country and buy a plane that's manufactured in another country, we don't get sales tax on it. That's not how that works. You have to voluntarily pay the sales tax from wherever you live. So no, I don't think the sales tax can go up. I've always been under the belief that the government has enough money. We just waste it a lot. So I think we have enough money to help people out. We just have to. What we have a hard time doing is realizing when something doesn't work. It takes us a long time to stop the bleeding. So we have to do a little bit better job in that. So I would be against a sales tax. I know a lot of people think it's a great thing, but I mean it's not like government's always been super responsible. So I'm not for it.
We're going to go the next question to John Damel. And over the past several years, the county has overtaxed county residents and has built up a fund balance of over $40 million. This, coupled with the $33 million coming in from the COVID relief package allocated to the county, brings the fund balance to over $73 million. Should the county continue to accumulate county taxpayers' money? What should they do with the funds that have been allocated as well? So a couple of questions there, but should the county continue to accumulate county taxpayer money? And what should it do with the funds that have been allocated?
All right, to go back a little bit of what Mark said before, some of this money is going to be used to pay down some bonds and to pay down some capital projects. I think that's right. I don't have that much of an issue with us having a balance. We should have an operating budget expense covered to keep the government running in case a major crisis were to happen, in case funds were to come in. We have to be self-sufficient in our area, say a backup generator, if you would. But at the same time, we have to make sure that those levels make sense. Is it 25% of our operating costs and health and human services costs? And anything above that should probably be given back to the taxpayers or used strictly to pay off debt. There are certain things that benefits that come with having that amount of money in the bank, much like a lot of business owners or people at home understand. When you have money, it helps you to save money. So you get better bond ratings, you get better strength in credit. There's all these things that come with it. And on the same aspect, it doesn't do us any good if we just hold on to that money and not put it to good use. So I think we're a little bit more than we should be, but I don't have a problem with money in the bank. But anytime that you have excess when people are hurting, especially in years of crisis, I think it's a bad look. So I definitely think that we have to do a better job of taking care of people and being responsible with the money they have, and maybe lowering some of the taxes we take out of them when we're doing well.
All right, let me pose a question to Mark Harris, the incumbent. Over the past several years, the county has overtaxed county residents and has built up a fund balance of over $40 million. Now, this, coupled with the $33 million from the recent COVID relief package allocated to the county, brings the fund balance to over $73 million. Should the county continue this accumulate county taxpayers' money, first of all? And what should it do with the funds that have been accumulated?
Well, first of all, the American Recovery monies will receive over 16 million this year and over 16 million next year. Those should not close out to the general fund. Those are going to have to be spent on specific projects, or we'll have to return the money. But as far as the general fund, when I started, we were at a very low balance, and one that was not looked on well by Moody's and the bond buying community. We're getting into a range they find acceptable, but they still suggest that we should have more. I kind of reject that idea and think that we should use it to reduce debt and reduce the amount our taxpayers are paying for debt service. And the county's equalized tax rate's been dropping now for years. It's at more than a 2-decade low, but it was $5.68 back in 2005 when I started. And that equalized rate, that's a rate based on the market value of properties, that's down to $4.95. So that's a very significant decrease. And it's largely the result of managing those reserves and debt. And the debt was $54.6 million when I started. With the payment we make April 1st, that principal payment of 8 million and the recall of the 2 bond issues, it'll be down to 26.9 million, or less than half of the level it was at when I came in. It just leaves the county in a stronger position, and we have a better ability to address emergencies and to deal with our spending. But as far as the COVID, I mean, the county's done so much, and it's all being discounted. We added scores of employees from the health department to do the contact tracing for COVID. We added employees and brought in the Wisconsin National Guard to do testing, and temporary employees to help with administering vaccinations. The amount of money involved in just those things is huge. But we also did a $750,000 small business loan fund that
Time.
that
Sorry
was
about
out of
that.
county funds. Yes.
Let me move on to the next question. It deals with community improvement, quality of life. This will go to Mark first. So there are over 11,000 veterans residing in Winnebago County. What is your plan to support them, whether that is obtaining employment in the civilian world, assisting with their benefits, or being a voice for the homeless?
Well, we have a veteran service office that works on all of those things. And I'm very proud of our veteran service office. It's bringing in tens of millions of dollars of benefits to veterans that live within this county they would not otherwise get. And we've seen such positive results from adding additional staff to the veteran service area that we reached a point last year where we were the second largest veteran service office in the state. And with some recent cutbacks in Milwaukee County, we may actually be the largest veteran service office. And we're doing a much better job of connecting veterans to their benefits than most other counties. And it actually has an economic benefit for everybody, because when a veteran gets a benefit he's earned and spends that money in our community, that's a benefit to the whole economy.
John, I'll pose a question to you. There are over 11,000 veterans residing in Winnebago County. What is your plan to support them, whether that is obtaining employment in the civilian world, assisting with their benefits, or being a voice for the homeless?
I mean, a lot of my work with the David Day Warming Shelter sees some of these veterans, and we have to understand that there is some PTSD and there are some mental health issues there. And they're not necessarily going to put their addictions down, but we have to do a better job of serving them, not just here in the county, but the state and the federal. I mean, I think some of the ways that we've let the veterans down are really disappointing. I think we've done a great job here in Winnebago County. I think our veteran service is very big, but it also comes to citizen engagement. We are free because of the sacrifices that they were willing to make sure that we have our freedom. And most of the world, and we need to understand that we have to give back to them too, not just the county, but the people. You know, we have to volunteer for services. We have to donate to their causes, whether it be the Wounded Warrior project or other things. We have to do a better job of surrounding them, taking care of them, and thanking them for their service. I would like to see a clinic, a VA-style clinic that's here in Oshkosh, so our veterans don't have to choose between going to Appleton or Milwaukee, especially when it's an emergency room visit. One of the things we could do is we could set up a Veterans Affairs office in our hospital so that when they go to the ER that we could actually help them apply for their paperwork, because if they don't call it in, they get the bill. Whereas if they call it in, they go through the paperwork, then the VA will cover it if they visit the ER here in town. So we need to set up some kind of assistance for them there at one of the ERs in Oshkosh to make it easier for these veterans to get those services. When you go to the ER, you need service now. That's why it's called emergency. So I think we could do it better, but I think we're doing a good job, but we are nowhere near where we need to be.
Okay, we have time for one more question before the closing statements, and we'll go to John first here as we start to wrap things up. Define the role of the county executive within the context of county board government. Do you support the current separation of duties and accountability under the current form of government? What ideas do you have to improve this system? You have 2 minutes to answer that question.
Yeah, I think the county executive has to run the county. Now, that's like me as a business. Do I have to be the accountant? No, I have to hire the best accountant. Do I have to be the banker? No, I have to find the best banker. Do I have to be a lawyer? No, I have to find the best lawyer. The county executive's job is really to bring out the best in everybody that serves the departments and the best of the people, and to work with the county board. That means going out and talking with them and make sure that we are bringing stuff to the table that has a good chance of passing, that has a good support from everybody else. But it's also engaging the citizens for us to do better. Hey, it's not what you do for your country or what your country does for you, but what you do for your country. We have to do that. We have to communicate better. So really, as a leader, as where I look at myself at Zeroni's in my business, my job is to make sure that my culture is great, that my workers are happy, and that my customers are happy. So those three need to happen. I think our board's a little large. I think we could shrink that down a little bit, but we definitely need a good board to work with it. But you absolutely need checks and balances and separation of power. And I think the way our government is set up countywide is decent.
Mark, I'll pose this last question to you before the closing statements. Define the role of the county executive within the context of county board government. Do you support the current separation of duties and accountability under the current form of government? What ideas do you have to improve the overall system?
Well, I do support the current separation of duties. I think the county board keeps the county executive in check. You know, I can't make a lot of big changes without the support of the board. The board controls the purse strings, but I do have a big job still. I have to propose the county budget, and I have to manage the personnel with the help of the HR department. So it's management of the county's employees and the proposal of that budget, and then working with the board to pass appropriate legislation. I don't think I would change the system at all. And I don't think the size of the board is going to make much of a difference. The board is always going to move cautiously. And I don't think that's a problem. I think that actually can be a strength. And I think it's working out actually quite well.
All right, we're going to prepare for the closing statements. Those come up next here, and we'll invite you, of course, to listen in at your leisure if you'd like. The Chamber of Commerce will post this later today. We'll have a link from our website, 1490wosh.com. Also planning to play it back during the final week of in March, readying it for the April election. Closing statements, each candidate will get 2 minutes. Again, I want to thank you, Mark and John, for answering questions this morning and joining us here on the Candidates Forum. Mark Harris, you'll have the first opportunity with your closing statement. You have 2 minutes, sir.
You know, I'm asking the public to give me one more term because I think I've done a really good job doing things like building a new park view while other counties were taking theirs down, improving the police and sheriff communication system, expanding the Veteran Service Office, just done a lot of good things. And the county's been run well, especially in areas of finance, managing the debt and controlling the taxes. John's saying that I've done a good job, and he's asking the public to deny me that one more term, but he's not making a case of why I should be fired by the public and replaced with him. I like John. I think he and I have very similar values, but I don't think he's shown the knowledge of the county to justify removing me and replacing me with him.
John, you have the final 2 minutes of the forum. Your closing statement, sir.
All right, here's the argument. Mark talked about how much the county has done in 2020 for COVID. It's tunnel vision. We need new eyes. What have we done for suicide prevention? What have we done for overdoses? What have we done for domestic violence? What have we done for all the other epidemics that are going on? What have we done to support the homelessness and everything else and everything else that's going on in our county? We need a partner, and we need a county government that is open to all people, no matter how wealthy, no matter how poor, to actually hear the concerns. Meanwhile, the county focused on how to restrict people and how to hold people in. We focused on making sure that we were arresting a dog groomer, even though if you look at what she was actually doing, it was very safe protocol. Maybe we didn't know it at the time, but we looked at power and force instead of how can we help. That's what we need. We need a county that says, how can we help? Another thing that affects our tax rate here or our rating with Moody's is the median income level. So we need somebody that can bring people together and businesses together to raise people up, so we can all benefit from that. Now, Mark's been in there for a long time. And yes, I think he has done a good job with budgeting. So he would make a great financial director. But when it comes to leadership, I think I had that on lockdown. A lot of the things, a lot of collaboration that I've done through the city, through my time bringing people together to actually find solutions that work, that change as a doer, not a promiser. That's why you should vote for John Dable on April 6th.
Gentlemen, again, thank you. I appreciate the time this morning. And again, you can watch this later online through the Chamber of Commerce, or we will link to it at our website, 1490 WOSH. And we're planning next week to have a rebroadcast. Mark Harris, thanks to you. John Damo, thanks to you.